Shalom, I am Roim ben Yehuda, prophetess of Judah, chosen by Elohim to walk before him in this generation. I am also called Linda Denise Swain Shepherd. Today's lecture is titled Keeping Biblical Passover. The biblical Pesach, which is the Hebrew word for Passover, will be discussed today in this lecture according to the Chumash, the Mosaic Law, and the Tanakh, the Hebrew Scriptures generally. To that end, we will look at the notices of our religious calendar found in Exodus 23:15, Exodus 34:18, Leviticus 23:5-8, and Deuteronomy 16:1-8. We will also examine the liturgical texts which pertain to the ritual for observing the Passover, as enshrined in Exodus chapter 12, which is the account of our departure, or Exodus, from Kemet, which is ancient Egypt. Thereafter we will investigate the Passover rituals contained in Numbers 28:16-25, but not those contained in Esdras 45:21-24, as we will not be looking at any external documents today, because most King James Version Bibles, which most of you are using, do not contain the Apocrypha anymore. Many people have actually said to me, we want you to look at the Bible without going into archaeology, without going into history, without going into anything scientific. And I want you to know that the reason that that is done is because the Bible cannot testify to itself. We cannot just look at the Bible as saying this, that, and the other, but there's no external evidence corroborating what is being said in the Bible. So that is the reason why we go to archaeology, to confirm the statements in the Bible, so that we can have a solid foundation. But I do know what you mean about the academics, because obviously it is the academics that have brought us to where we are today, not realizing, well, not even realizing, but they have failed to be true witnesses to history, so we would be able to find what we're looking for straight away. I mean, 20 years ago, we didn't even know there was such a thing as black history, and we've had to go and find that for ourselves. But the academics, historians, they would have known this from 150 years ago, yet that hadn't trickled down to us. So I understand what you mean, but at the same time, you've got to understand that a book, any book, including the Bible, cannot testify to itself. It cannot be a witness to itself. And that's the reason why we need external evidences to corroborate the account that it has given us, so that we can know that we are dealing with something that is true. So, from this inspection of the Chumash, we will discover how to keep the biblical Passover in accordance with the commands of Elohim. So let's jump right in and go to Exodus 12:6. There we're going to read, "And ye shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of the children of Israel shall kill it in the evening." This verse is directing us to celebrate the Passover at the full moon, on the 14th day of the first month at evening, presumably when the new moon would appear. Although there is no Mosaic authority for such new moon observance, Psalm 81:3 and Ezekiel 45:17 associate our festivals with the appearance of new moons. We are commanded to obtain a male lamb in its first year on the 10th day. That's Exodus 12:3. Let's go to that. Go to Exodus 12:3 and then we'll jump straight into number 5. "Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. Now jump straight through to number 5, same chapter 12. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. So we take it from the flocks, the lamb, the sheep, or the goats. So then we're told to kill it on the 14th day at evening, which is Exodus 12:6, which we've just read. Sprinkle the blood of the zebah, which is a Hebrew word for sacrifice, onto our doorpost and lintels. We'll read that in Exodus 12:7. Let's go there. And they shall take the blood and strike it on the 2 side posts and on the upper doorpost of the house, wherein they shall eat it. We have to eat it all and leave nothing of the meat, but if anything remains until the morning, it's got to be burnt in the fire. I think that's Exodus 12:10. Yeah, and ye shall let nothing of it remain until the morning, and that which remaineth of it until the morning, ye shall burn it in fire. So the Passover meal must be eaten whilst we are fully clothed. That's Exodus 12:11. And thus shall ye eat it, with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and ye shall eat it in haste, for it is Elohim's Passover. The Passover meal must also be eaten at night. So go to Exodus 12:42. It is a night to be much observed unto Elohim for bringing them out from the land of Egypt. This is that night of Elohim to be observed of all the children of Israel in their generations. So a question arises, how could a new moon be observed on the 14th day of the month of Abib, when the prophet Moses was using a 30-day lunar calendar? You'll need to go to Genesis 7:11 and then Genesis 8:3 and 4. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heavens were opened. Now go to Genesis 8:3 and then we'll look at 4. And the waters returned from off the earth continually, and after the end of the 150 days the waters were abated. And the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. Excuse me. Now Noah disembarked in the 2nd month, so we have 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, which brings us up to the 7th month, because the 150 days brings us to the 7th month, and he embarked on the 2nd month of the year. That was 150 days. 150 days divided by the 5 months equals 30 days each. So what we know that Moses was telling us is that in his day, every month had 30 days consistently. That would mean that the new moon would have been appearing on the 1st of the month, not on the 14th day, thus signifying the beginning of the new month. Now we don't know about the changes that have gone on since Moses' day, because no one can speak to that. But what we can extrapolate out of that is that the children of Israel left Kemet before Kemet made the transition from the lunar calendar to the solar calendar and 365 days. What we were dealing with and what Moses is dealing with is a 360-day calendar of 30 days each. So we could not have been asked to wait for the new moon on the 14th, because if we're dealing with a 30-day month, each month is 30 days, then the new moon would have been appearing on the 1st day, not the 14th. Right, now we do not find upon a careful reading of Chumash that Elohim commanded us to observe the festivals with the appearance of any full moon. What we do find is he has furnished us with specific dates and specific days for his feast upon which they are to be observed. Let's go to Exodus 12:6. I know we've read that already, but we want to keep that in context so we keep that flow going. And ye shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. Now go to Leviticus 23:6. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Elohim. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. Go to 24, Leviticus 23:24. Ye shall do, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th month, in the 1st day of the month, shall ye have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, and holy convocation. So that would be Rosh Hashanah. So go now to 24. Is it 24? 25. No, it isn't. 27. Also on the 10th day of this 7th month, there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be an holy convocation unto you, and ye shall afflict your souls, and offer an offering made by fire unto Elohim, so Yom Kippur. So you see that in each of these festivals, there's a month when the festival is supposed to be observed, and the day is stated upon which that festival should be observed too. Elohim would have known that the moon would fluctuate between days, because when the moon orbits around the earth and then the sun around the earth, is it the sun around the earth, moon around the earth, and then the sun around the earth, you get some kind of gravitational shift that gives you, on the lunar month today in our time, 28 days, 29 days, or 30 days. But what Moses was saying, in his time there was only 30 days. So whatever was happening, what confluence of events were occurring in the heavens, I can't speak to that, no one can speak to that. But we are being told here in our Chumash that in that time that Moses was writing, there were 30-day months. So these are specific days of specific months. They're not subject to any interpretation. So we can't extrapolate out of that we need to observe the full moon, because Elohim has given us dates and days and times when we are to keep his feast, and nothing at all is said about any full moon, half moon, new moon, or total eclipse. Exodus 12:6 commands us to keep the lamb until the 14th day and kill it at evening. So there is a presupposition here that the day precedes the evening, with the regular biblical day being considered to start at dawn. Now from Deuteronomy 6:6 we find the Hebrew words. Let's go to Deuteronomy 6:6 and let's read it together, and then I'll tell you what Hebrew words we found there. Deuteronomy 16:6. Okay, got it. But at the place which Elohim thy El shall choose to place his name in, there thou shalt sacrifice the Passover at evening, at the going down of the sun, at the season that thou came forth out of Egypt. So at the going down of the sun. I don't know if any of you have got Tanakhs, but if you've got a Tanakh, it's got English on one side, it's got the Hebrew on the other side. In Deuteronomy 16:6 there is a word, Be'in ha'abayim, which means between the two evenings, which is stated in Deuteronomy 16:6 as between the settings of the sun. Yeah. Scholars, theologians, and rabbis alike have used these words to construct a hypothesis that the lamb is to be kept until the afternoon. The reference for that is the Tanakh Stone Edition 1996 Art Scroll, or the period just before the evening, so before sunset, both of which set aside Mosaic law, requiring the lamb to be kept until the 14th day and not the 13th day. So for those people who believe that a day starts in the evening would precede the day, so they wouldn't be able to keep the lamb until the 14th day, because the 14th day would start at evening, and then evening would be followed by night, and night would be followed by morning, and morning by afternoon. So that debunks all of those ideas. We do have numerous verses in Shamash treating of a day beginning at dawn and not at evening as erroneously asserted. Let's have a look at Leviticus 7:15. And the flesh of the sacrifice of his peace offering for thanksgiving shall be eaten the same day that it is offered. He shall not leave any of it until the morning. So if a day started at evening, the prophet Moses could not say to them, it must be eaten the same day and not be left until morning. And there are many verses such like, but that's just for another discussion. I'm not going to go into that comprehensively, only suffice as much as we need to understand how to observe the biblical Passover. So if the multitude are followed, the Passover starts on the evening of the 14th Abib. So like I just said, you'd start at the evening of the 14th Abib, would be followed by the morning of the 14th Abib, then the afternoon of the 14th Abib, then the evening would herald in the new day, which would be the 15th, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Let's look at Leviticus 23:6. And on the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread unto Elohim. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. It is plain that in following the multitude there is no Passover, because if the Passover, we have to keep the lamb until the 14th day and kill it at evening, there is no 14th day preceding the 14th evening. See Job 17:12. 14th Abib, the day for our Passover, commences at dawn at 6 a.m. The lamb, sheep or kid is kept until the 14th day. It is slaughtered at the evening of the 14th, eaten on the 14th night, with anything left over being burnt in the morning when the 15th day starts at dawn. This is due to the fact that the Passover and the Festival of Unleavened Bread are two distinct and separate festivals, with the Festival of Unleavened Bread commencing for 7 days. Let's look at Exodus 12:5. No, actually it's 12:6. No, 12:15, sorry. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread, even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day unto the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. Now go to Leviticus 23, 5 and 6. In the 14th day of the first month at evening is Elohim's Passover, and on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Elohim. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. So the scripture, and we can look at numerous amounts of scripture, is telling us that these are two distinct and separate festivals. It is true that Exodus 12:18 and Deuteronomy 16:1-8 attempt to combine these two distinct and separate festivals together. However, let's actually go to Deuteronomy 16:1-8. Let's read it all the way through, and then I will discuss it. Observe the month of Abib, and keep the Passover unto Elohim thy El. For in the month of Abib Elohim thy El brought thee out of Egypt by night. Thou shalt therefore sacrifice the Passover unto Elohim thy El, of the flock and the herd, in the place which Elohim shall choose to place his name there. Thou shalt eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days shalt thou eat unleavened bread therewith, even the bread of affliction, for thou camest forth out of the land of Kemet in haste, that thou mayest remember the day when thou camest forth out of the land of Kemet, all the days of thy life. And there shall be no leavened bread seen with thee in all thy coast 7 days, neither shall anything of the flesh which thou sacrificed the first day at evening remain all night until the morning. Thou mayest not sacrifice the Passover within any of thy gates which Elohim thy El giveth thee, but at the place which Elohim thy El shall choose to place his name in, there thou shalt sacrifice the Passover at evening, at the going down of the sun, at the season that thou camest forth out of Kemet. Well, Deuteronomy 16:2 speaks to us eating cattle for the Passover, and this is at variance with Exodus 12:5, which stipulates that we must only eat from the flocks, the sheep, the lamb, the goats. We also find matzah mentioned in Deuteronomy 16:1-8 as bread of affliction. That's in Deuteronomy 16:3. Again, it's at variance with the liturgical text of Exodus 12, which does provide of no expiatory reason for the Passover. Additionally, Deuteronomy 5-6 is a later addition. Now it is prohibiting Hebrew Israelites from keeping the Passover at home. See Exodus 12:3-4. Let's go there. Exodus 12:3-4. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of the month they shall take to them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbour next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. So it is at variance again, and speaks about a communal Passover happening in Jerusalem. So it's presupposing in Deuteronomy, where was I on that? Deuteronomy 16:5-6 presupposes that the temple in Jerusalem is already existing, in the name where thou will place in the place where thou will place thy name. there you keep the Passover. That's what it says in there. But we know that from the time of Yehoshua, after Moses, and then the period of the Judges, and also the Nabi Samuel, no Passover was kept. We see in with King Josiah that he kept the Passover, and it was the first time in the book of Kings that the Passover had been kept since the children of Israel left Kemet, so since the time of Moses. So no Passover was had after the wilderness, the period in the wilderness. So what this text is speaking to, Deuteronomy 16:5-6, it is suggesting that the temple is already in existence and we can no longer keep Passover in our homes, but must come up to the temple to keep that communal Passover. So it's definitively an interpolation. Whilst Exodus 12:18 is another addition, because that would cut short the festival of Matzah by 1 day, where Matzos, where it is to start on the 14th Abib. So let's count it. If it started on the 14th Abib, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, that would just give us 20 days. Yet Exodus tells us that we have to keep the festival of leaven for 1 and 20 days, so 21 days. That can only happen if the Passover is a distinct day of its own, and then we have 7 days for the festival of leaven. So when you start that, it's 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, then we have the 21. So the first day of Passover, the first day is for Passover, and 7 days for the festival of Matzos. And the only method by which these festivals can correspond to the 1 and 20th day as prescribed in Exodus 12:18. Let's have a look at 12:18, Exodus 12:18, because we're already there. And we're going to look at some other texts that verify it. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at evening, ye shall eat unleavened bread until the 1 and 20th day of the month at evening. Okay, so let's now go to Exodus 23:15. Thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded thee in the time appointed of the month Abib. For in it thou camest out from Kemet, and none shall appear before me empty. Go now to Exodus 34:18. The feast of unleavened bread shalt thou keep 7 days. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread, as I commanded thee in the time of the month Abib, for in the month Abib thou camest forth out of Kemet. Go now to Leviticus 25:6. No, Leviticus 23:6, sorry. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Elohim. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. Now let's go to Numbers 28:17. And in the 15th day of this month is the feast. 7 days shall unleavened bread be eaten. So it is reiterated time and time again that the feast of unleavened bread, this is the feast that lasts 7 days. Furthermore, the prophet Moses makes it crystal clear that a day starts at dawn and that the festival of Matzos begins after that of the Passover. Go to Numbers 33:3. And they departed from Ramses in the first month on the 15th day of the first month. On the morrow after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with a high hand in the sight of all of Kemet. So we went the day after the Passover. So the prophet Moses is telling us biblical days begin at dawn. The day does not start in the evening. And we went out in the morning, the day after the Passover, and now you can see where you have the conflicting texts pertaining to the Passover starting at evening, where you can see plainly that there's no way for you to keep the Passover if the Passover starts at evening. You can't comply with the commandments to keep your lamb or sheep or kid up to the 14th day and then slaughter it at evening. That's just not possible if a day starts at evening. It is only possible if the regular day, starts at dawn. The Passover is not a holy convocation. It is our remembrance day, or our commemoration day, or our Thanksgiving day. It is a day when we remember what Elohim did for us by reenacting that day at night, fully dressed, staff in hand, shoes on, shawls, cloaks, wraps, ready to go in haste. It's a commemoration. It's the Hebrew Israelite Thanksgiving. That's what the Passover is. The festival of unleavened bread, however, is a holy convocation. The first day and the seventh day are holy convocations in which we can do no work. Go to Numbers 28 and let's look at 8 and 25. No, 18, sorry. Numbers 28, 18, and then 25. In the first day shall be a holy convocation. Ye shall do no manner of servile work herein. And then if you go to 25, and on the seventh day ye shall have a holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work. Of the three great feasts mentioned by Elohim in Numbers 23:17, let's go look at that. Three times in the year all the males shall appear before Elohim thy El. The Passover is not one of them. That's something for us to think about. Shalom.